Okay, welcome to our new episode of Data in the Hallway. Daniel, it's good to see you. I know you just traveled from Amsterdam to the US yesterday. Good to see that you made it safely, and also
Yes.
want to welcome Sunny Bains, who had a little journey of his own driving from Sacramento to South Bay, which is not always not it's not always a pleasant drive. I've done it a number of times myself, so glad to have both of you arrive at your destination safely. And I want to welcome you, Sunny, as our first real guest. We had our first episode sort of recorded by just amongst the hosts, but it's good to have you. And the topic of the discussion today is obviously TiDB. We're a MySQL compatible database and want to talk about the longevity of MySQL. It's been around for a long time and it's still very, very popular, especially amongst open source enthusiasts. So want to sort of explore that topic a bit. Sunny, I'll give you a chance to sort of introduce yourself and tell us where you're from.
Oh, I'm from Sacramento, and I joined PingCAP last year to work on the storage side of things because that's what I did at MySQL. I
Cool.
used to lead the InnoDB storage engine team, and I was there for more years than I remember, something like 16 or 17.
Right.
And yeah, so that's basically my life story in
So
a nutshell.
So when were you first introduced to MySQL? Is it longer than 16, 17 years or like,
No, surprisingly, I had not heard of MySQL when I joined the InnoDB team. I did
okay,
not join MySQL. I actually joined InnoDB.
okay.
In 2006, InnoDB was owned by Oracle.
Hmm.
And most people don't know this, that InnoDB and MySQL were two different companies. And Heike, the creator of InnoDB, had sold InnoDB to Oracle in 2005 September, I think, which
Hmm.
I think internally within MySQL is called Black Friday. Yeah, it is.
Yeah,
And it came as a huge shock to
right.
both sides, to people at MySQL. And so Oracle had already bought InnoDB before they acquired MySQL via Sun. And
Hmm.
I was, I think, the third or fourth developer that was hired by InnoDB, and the first person outside Finland to be hired, actually. I was based in
Cool.
Australia in those days. And so I was an Oracle employee from day one.
Hmm.
I did not get into Oracle via MySQL. So that's basically my background in MySQL. And that was the first time I'd heard of MySQL, I'll be honest.
Hmm. Cool. So, I mean, what's your experience been like, since you're, I mean, what was your sort of first impression of the technology and the community, and what's been your journey like over the past, well over a decade,
So,
obviously.
okay, so I mean, yes, I'll stick to the MySQL side of things.
Yeah.
Initially, because I was part of Oracle InnoDB, we were at an arm's length from the MySQL ecosystem.
Mhm.
So InnoDB had some commercial arrangement with MySQL. And the success of MySQL was also based on the commercial success was to a very, very large extent based on its relationship with InnoDB. So that was the first truly ACID compliant storage engine they had. And so they had some commercial arrangement, but we were at an arm's distance from the community. So we would send our code to MySQL, it would be merged by the MySQL people, and then it would be pushed out. And anything that the questions or support kind of issues came via MySQL. There was no direct customer to customer or user to user interaction with InnoDB in those days. InnoDB had separate contracts with Amazon, I think, for backup and stuff like that, but that was about it. They had sort of side thing because it touched mostly InnoDB side of things. So my exposure to the community, MySQL community, started after Oracle acquired MySQL, and the
Mhm.
InnoDB team was merged with the MySQL team. And then InnoDB became like a first-class citizen of the MySQL ecosystem. From
Mhm.
the users loved InnoDB, so we were interact with companies like Google, and Mark Callahan of Google would send us patches, and some of the first big patches actually came from Google via Mark Callahan. And I still remember those were in like 2007 or 2008, I can't remember. So, but we had some interaction, but only with very large companies in those days. With the general community, it came after, DB team, MySQL team came together in 2009, I think it was, or 10 when Oracle acquired Sun. And my first impression was that it's a great, thriving, community of enthusiasts who love MySQL. They really do, and they still do. And there was obviously this misapprehension that Oracle is going to kill it and this and that. So there was a lot of those kind of vibes. And in the first few years, Oracle employees were seen like villains almost. That you're going to destroy MySQL and you're going to kill it. And Monty obviously played to the gallery, and he made sure everyone sort of thought along those lines. So there was a little bit of hostility, not too much, but there was some hostility in the early days. And then Oracle also did a few things that sort of in the early days gave the signals that it wasn't interested. For example, they decided to abandon the O'Reilly MySQL conference, which was the big event of the year for MySQL people. And so people thought, oh, Oracle's not picking it up, Oracle is not joining, and so it just died. And I think Oracle even perhaps may have told O'Reilly not to use the MySQL name or something along those lines. I'm guessing, this is my guess, because it just stopped. And there was a lot of noise in the community, and what's going to happen, and this and that. And then Percona stepped up and started their Percona conference, which is a great success today. But it wasn't guaranteed when they first did it. And it was perhaps the momentum of the MySQL community that took it forward. I mean, people really do love MySQL. They do. It's a fact.
Yeah. No, I mean, you better not touch community events. Like, I mean, you do that at your peril. I think I mean, even if a slight tweak or like changing locations, I've seen that where that really upsets a lot of people in the community, and that has a lot of repercussions. So
yeah, and I think after Percona Live for a few years, they tried to pick it up again with, I think it was called MySQL Connect.
Yes,
part of Oracle Open World, but yeah, it's been difficult.
Yes, it's they just couldn't build the momentum that Percona had by that time sort of snatched out of the hand. I mean, Oracle had sort of mishandled that whole thing. That's my opinion anyway. They had a good thing going, and they just didn't value it.
Yeah, but it must also have been very weird for Oracle to have like a product that's like open source, and then there's a conference, and it's not just paying customers that are going there. It's just like all kinds of people, and yeah, it's probably
I think that is a very good point. Totally agree. Oracle doesn't have a tradition to cater to freebies. People just come to kick the tires, and they're not going to spend big money. They have Oracle World for that. Oracle Open World. And Oracle Open World is about business, and it's a great conference. And I've been to many Oracle Open Worlds, and it's a very serious business conference. Whereas the MySQL conference is with the spirit of MySQL open source, where there are lots of smart people and technical people, but they don't necessarily have big checks in their pocket walking around. That's the difference. Yeah. Oracle is looking for the big checks. So
it's a big mismatch in that sense. Yeah, it's a big culture clash.
So there was a cultural sort of huge cultural difference. Right. And I totally agree with Daniel that Oracle tried the same trick with their Oracle Open World and this and that and whatever else they had. And it became more of a customer event where customers come in, they have these closed room discussions, and customers, which are fine actually. It's, if you have lots of customers, it's perfectly great. So that's my sort of. But the community then eventually came around that Oracle is a good steward of MySQL. And I was there through those years, and I can vouch for it. That they may not have played the open source game by the rules or the expectations of the community, but they invested in MySQL, and they gave MySQL people a free hand. So you hear a lot about what people saying that, oh, Oracle doesn't want to compete with its flagship database. That's all bullshit. There's no basis in reality. There was, okay, you can do it. You're not going to hire 20,000 people the way Oracle database has. So you have to work with what you've got, but go for it.
Right.
So you can argue that that's by design, it sort of keeps you from competing with Oracle, but I don't think so. I think in the end, you're limited by many other things. Your user base doesn't want what Oracle database has. Or Oracle database has so many things that most of our users have worked around in different ways to scale in a very different way. So where Oracle gives you certain guarantees within certain constraints, MySQL doesn't give you any such thing. You have to go and build that out and do the tooling yourself. So it's a different mindset. And you will find that people in the MySQL world think very differently from people in the Oracle database world. Very different way of thinking. Yeah. It's almost like doing more with less kind of thing. Where's your creativity in solving these things? That's like the open source in general community vibe.
Yeah, I think MySQL has been very essential in the whole internet startups, especially in the early 2000s. And I don't think the internet would have looked the same if there wasn't any MySQL.
That's a great point. And replication was probably one of the biggest factors for sort of helping with the growth and explosion of data that came around that time, the first internet sort of post 2000 or early 2000s. Postgres just wasn't ready for it. And in my opinion, it's still not fully ready. But behind the scenes in the cloud, they can do some clever things. But MySQL had an edge. Even though the original replication, the story I've heard from within Oracle is that the guy, I think it was Sasha or Pasha or something like that, he wrote it over a weekend. First MySQL replication. Yeah.
Wow.
That's a story I heard within MySQL.
Cool. Yeah. I mean, it's been no, sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
No, I said that it's had such a huge impact on the life of MySQL.
Right. I mean, I haven't been I'd been away from database world for a while before I came back to a few years ago. But even just high tech in general, like you've heard like different companies and that pique people's interest. Like, I mean, people talked about NoSQL for a while, and then I felt like 2015, 2016, all people talked about was like Elasticsearch, but it's kind of amazing how MySQL has sort of sustained their, popularity, like all these years over 2 decades. So I feel like in the tech world, things sort of come and go, but MySQL just like steady as you go kind of thing. That's been my impression.
I think that is my impression too.
Yeah.
Though MySQL doesn't have that preeminent position it had, which it sort of dominated the landscape in the open source, as Daniel also pointed out, the whole internet thing, the internet sort of story that it had in the 2000 and perhaps 7-8 to 2015. Because a lot of the companies started, their growth was stalled because of problems within the whole MySQL scaling issue. But the data that people started collecting from around 2005-06 was unimaginable. Things like MySQL were not built for that scale. It is the cleverness of the people who used MySQL that they took it to the scale at which it's running today. Right. It wasn't the part of the MySQL plan or story originally. It was meant to be just like any other database, doing your little accounts on the side or storing your forum or something like that. But it was many clever people took it to levels that at least I couldn't imagine. And I still can't imagine how they do it. So, but they had they were dealing with some serious limitations that MySQL had. It's a single node system, and the replication also wasn't designed to scale to petabytes or the scale at which it runs, let's say within Facebook or Meta as it's called today. So but it's still not all companies are running at that scale. There are many companies that are running at a medium scale of a few hundred gigabytes, few terabytes, maybe reaching 50 terabytes, and it works fine for those guys. And I still think it's a great choice. It's simple to set up, it's easy to use, it works, and it's battle tested. So people, and the market is also much larger. We have to keep that in mind. So many different systems can coexist. That's the other thing. So I think that's why it's found its groove, so to speak, and it sort of sits there and people are comfortable with it. There's a lot of large talent pool that people can tap into and that sort of thing. So it's found its place. I mean, there are contenders. Postgres is rising very fast. And then the data that's being collected is also different scale altogether. And that's why you see, like TiDB being important in that space.
Right.
Because TiDB now is designed for large data. It may not be as fast as a single node MySQL, which is designed for single node performance. But if you want scale, then you have to always balance a few things, do a few trade-offs. And if business will always trade off with a little bit of drop in small data set performance, but with that throw money at it and somehow or the other and make it scale and make sure that the business keeps going and it's easy to manage. So that's where MySQL, I think, has sort of found its upper limit. That you have to have some very, very clever teams to take it beyond its ceiling. There are teams that do it, like Booking is one example, Daniel, and Meta's done it. But then you need to have a certain kind of talent to take it to where it is within Meta. Yeah. Out of the box, no.
Right.
And if you want to take a database that far, like there's so many things that like you can't fix on the database side, but you have to fix on the application side. For example, like the application delay and sharding, that's just adding like a lot of work to on the shoulders of developers.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, you have to have a whole process that is fine-tuned to running it at that scale. It's not an out-of-the-box solution. For that, you need something like TiDB that lets you scale very well. It has its own compromises that it's made, but at least it solves those problems.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, so both of you are active, obviously, both in TiDB and MySQL. And I know you still make contributions to MySQL along with the work you do for TiDB and PingCAP. Like, so how do you sort of balance, like, I want to make this sort of technical improvement or contribution to MySQL versus like TiDB? Like, I mean, what are some of the thinking process that you go through to figure out like what's the right home for this widget that I want to add, for example, I mean, I'm sure I could have phrased it a lot better, but.
So you're asking that to me?
Either one of you, both of you actually. So,
I don't make any contributions publicly. I have my own branch, which I fiddle with on the weekends every now and then, but I don't push any code upstream.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, so TiDB is a MySQL compatible database. So we do the database side of things. People that have applications that want to use TiDB still have to use a connector for MySQL for whatever language they might be using, and might be using other tools that are related to MySQL because it's just built on top of the MySQL protocol. So, for example, there were some issues with the Java connector, especially with TiDB, but also with older versions of MySQL, for example. So those are the kinds of issues that I would like to see fixed, and then if there's a solution that I can do, sure, I will happily contribute fixes to either the code or the documentation or anything that helps both TiDB and MySQL users.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, this is sort of, I don't know, it's not directly related, I guess. And especially for open source projects that's been around for a long time. I mean, I'm thinking anything like longer than 5 years, it becomes, sometimes it's difficult for newcomers to start like contributing because it's really complicated to sort of understand the architecture and the process of even like, who do I need to contact to start, making these feature changes. Like, I wonder what that's like for MySQL. Like if you have a young student in college who's interested in open source, like is it like what's the onboarding experience like, I wonder. But
I can answer that. Sorry,
yeah.
Daniel, you want to go
Yeah.
ahead?
No, go for it.
Okay, so I've handled
Yeah.
a lot of contributions to MySQL. I think the maximum number of contributions is to come for InnoDB. And so I know the contributions. There are very few contributions actually that in the total big scheme of things. Now, to answer your question about ramping up and how do new developers or anyone from university or that sort of thing, even new employees at Oracle, same thing. I would say that the experience is daunting, but it's not that hard. But initially, if you are not, it's not so. I don't think it's special for MySQL or InnoDB. It is the same for anybody going to any system. Like I joined PingCAP last year, and it's taken me almost a year to really claim that I have some knowledge of some part of the system. Right? So the struggle is the same, whether it's MySQL or it's some other code base. I don't see that as a problem. But where it gets challenging is that in a system like TiDB, it is far more complex as a database. In the MySQL world, certain things are a lot easier. You can sort of zero in on the optimizer. You can zero in on the InnoDB storage engine. You can zero in on let's say, the runtime. You can zero in on very specifically to some part of replication. So it's a little bit easier, in my opinion, starting out if you're tinkering with MySQL code. So let's say your interest is in InnoDB. And that seems to be the case even in the MySQL world. A lot of people are interested in replication and InnoDB. Very few optimizer patches, in fact, I would say hardly any, maybe one a year or some tiny little thing here and there. But large patches for replication and large patches for medium patches for InnoDB and good ones. There, it's people who are employed by companies who are running their own MySQL but not paying Oracle. That's usually the case. So they have employed very smart people whose full-time job is to study MySQL code. And then they find problems in production and they are desperate to get it pushed upstream because they don't want to maintain a fork or patches. That's where most of the code comes. I have yet to see code that's come from I have one, I'm wrong there. He got a fantastic patch from the University of Michigan from a PhD student. The person who did the CATS algorithm, I think, contention-aware transaction scheduling. That came from a university. In fact, that's the only one I've ever seen that has gone from academia into production. I remember I handled that part of it. And that was very rare. And in fact, I did a talk with somebody from University of Texas on how that whole thing came about and how it went and why it is difficult for people from outside Oracle to contribute to Oracle. And one of the reasons is once it crosses the barrier, let's say a patch, you send me a patch, doesn't matter what it is, you send me a patch. Once it crosses the barrier of, okay, we will look at this patch and it goes inside the, behind the firewall of Oracle, the processes are completely different. And they are designed, contained within Oracle. They're not meant to be leaked out of Oracle. For whatever, commercial security, whatever reason, there are perfectly valid reasons for it. And then that causes a bit of a problem. So you found problems, you found bugs, and how much do you contribute back? I mean, let's say you triggered some bug that's in the general system, but it's sort of affected by the patch, and then ownership of the patch. So once you thrown the patch across the wall, the people within the institution have to then take ownership of it. And it's a much bigger problem than it looks.
Mhm.
So TiDB has a different model. It's more open because it's probably not running at the scale of Oracle, but
Right.
here it's a lot easier because we do
Yeah.
everything, our process, everything in the open.
Right.
But it doesn't mean that this is how all companies should function or not. I don't have any
Right.
such vision to share. It's just different courses for
Yeah.
different horses.
Just one note from my side is just like with both MySQL and with TiDB, there are like developer manuals to just get you up to speed with like development environment and what kind of things you should be doing with your code, etc. So if people are interested, we can probably put some links in the show notes.
Right. Right. Yeah. I mean, the reason why I asked the question, I think for open source projects, I mean, the hottest one right now is probably Kubernetes, right? And then before that was maybe something like OpenStack. After a certain number of years, the architecture and the technology gets really complicated, and it's really hard for somebody that's new to sort of onboard. It's a typical issue. I don't think it's unique to any of these like a particular communities or like necessarily something because communities aren't handling other people appropriately. So yeah, I mean, I think these are sort of usual challenges a lot of communities go through as they mature and then technology becomes just a lot more complex. So
I think it's
cool.
easy. The
Go ahead.
advice that people usually give for people to join open source projects is you can fix a spelling mistake in the comment and send it, and that's a
Right.
perfectly valid patch.
Yeah.
And you can slowly sort of work your way up. I think the Linux kernel people encourage that sort of model, which I think is great.
Right.
You
Right.
don't have to start with something deep and fantastic that you have to impress the world. You can start with little things.
Right.
And as your interest grows and as your knowledge grows, as your interaction with the community members and trust grows, you can start doing bigger things. MySQL is a bit like that. It's not as open as the Linux kernel, but it's a bit like that. Most open sources, I think, like that.
No, I mean, that's a good advice. I mean, I'm not as technical as either one of you, but as a community manager, when I talk to especially young people that are trying to get into open source, I say, don't think anything that you do is trivial. Like even like you said, even if it's a typo fix, like it's going to be valuable you're going to benefit a lot of people because you fixed, like it's something that's unclear in the documentation that's going to help a lot of people. And, you don't have to be adding a, tremendous feature to the software
Correct.
to be like worthy of to be worthy of a worthy open source contributor. So yeah, I mean, thanks Daniel for sending that developer guide. I'll definitely include this in the podcast notes. So cool. Right. So Daniel and Sunny, anything else you want to talk about MySQL as we're starting to sort of wrap things up here? Like anything else you want to share about your experience with MySQL or the history that we didn't get to talk about?
Not really.
Yeah.
I think, I mean, I work for PingCAP, so the only thing I'll say, history was MySQL and the future is TiDB PingCAP.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. 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 I mean, obviously we're all employees of PingCAP, but as somebody who's been passionate about open source for a long time, it's good to see communities like MySQL still thriving and being successful. So I think that's a good thing. Yeah. I mean, I mean, without a healthy MySQL community, like we probably wouldn't have jobs right now, right? So
Very true.
we have to
I
be,
benefited a lot from the open source side of MySQL.
right.
I can't complain. I enjoyed my time at MySQL. The people there are fantastic. The team, the people I know, or at least I knew, they were very nice people, all of them. I have nothing but the highest of respect for them. I'm still friends with them too.
Yeah. No, that's good to hear. So, so this is something that I'm thinking of doing because we're going to have podcast guests from a number of different, countries and different parts of the world. So I want to try to end on a sort of a lighter note. Sunny, you'll be driving back home to Sacramento as soon as we're done here. So tell us something about Sacramento that people outside of Sacramento or California know about. I mean, I think obviously being from the Bay Area, I have my own stereotype and perception of Sacramento, although I've been there a number of times. But what's something you like about Sacramento that most people don't know?
Oh man, I
It
wish
could
I
be as
could really
simple as your
answer that.
favorite restaurant that maybe I never heard of.
Oh, okay. Oh man, I'll tell you what. Then
Yeah.
there's a bakery next to my house, close to my house.
Okay.
Man, I reckon one of the best bakeries I've ever been to in the US, at least.
What was the name of it? Like, can you spell it too?
E T E double T O R E, and I think it's got one of those inflection kind of signs on it.
Oh, okay. Okay. Cool.
It's a great bakery.
Yeah. Is it like I mean, is it like a Spanish or Mexican or what kind of what kind of bakery is it?
I've been told it's a European style bakery, whatever that means. I thought all bakeries were European style, but it's a European style bakery.
Yeah. No. Yeah. No. I mean, like,
very nice. I highly recommend that anyone visiting there, and if you're visiting there, I mean, you're welcome to come to my house after that.
I love baked goods, so I'll have to check it out. It's a nice travel tip. Like, who would have known, right? So cool. Well,
Yeah, it's a good bakery. I really like it.
Cool. All right. Well, Sunny, thanks for jumping on and talking to us about MySQL, and Daniel, you too. You both have a safe rest of your journey, and I'll see you folks soon.
Cheers, man. Thanks very much for the opportunity. It was fun.
Thanks.